Hello students, happy Friday. So every Friday I tell a joke. Are you ready for the joke? Well, once in a while I get a letter to send home to parents, and it's kind of a problem for a teacher because when I dismiss the class, a lot of the letters are on the floor, they've been left on the desk. It's obvious a lot of parents aren't getting the important letters sent home. So I thought, let me give a speech to the students. And I said, I am going to give a letter to you, but it is not a letter for you. It is a letter for your parents. If your parents aren't interested, if they don't want to read the letter, that's their business. They can throw it in the garbage. They can leave it somewhere if they want. But you don't have a right to do that. You do not have a right to deprive your parents of an important message that is from the school that maybe they are really interested in hearing. So every person in this class has a responsibility to bring the letter home and give it to a parent. Every person in this classroom is a mailman, and you all have an important job. So a student raised her hand. She looked kind of upset. She said, "Excuse me, I'm a little bit offended by what you just said. All of us are mailmen? I'm not, I can't be a mailman. I'm female. So can you please correct your language?" And I'm like, all right, I'm sorry. Some of you today will be mailmen, and the rest of you will be female men. And I got in big trouble for that. All right, hope you enjoyed that. Let's do the opening. Opening. 300,000 moles of dihydrogen are reacted with 1 mole of dioxygen. What is the limiting reactant? What is the maximum quantity of water that can be produced? I want you to figure this out, write down the answers, and then unpause the video. Please pause the video now. Okay, we are back. Just a reminder, we have an extra credit assignment. It is chemicals listed in food labels. Hopefully you'll have a little fun with that. I hope you find it really interesting. It's interesting to see how dishonest some food labels are and how dangerous some food chemical additives can be. So I hope you're going to enjoy that and find it interesting and find it useful to protect your health and the health of your loved ones. That is due Wednesday. Ladies and gentlemen, we're doing stoichiometry, the quantitative relationship of reactants and products in a chemical equation. So the first thing you do to solve this problem is to write out the chemical equation. Hopefully you knew that dihydrogen is H2 and dioxygen is O2. Those are our reactants, and they yield something. They yield a product called water. So the first thing you do is balance the chemical equation. I'm hoping that you're good at that by this time. And if you only memorize one chemical equation, I would say this is the one to memorize. This is a pretty important one. It has a molar ratio of 2 to 1 to 2. It's nice just to have that memorized. Okay, so this is interesting. With 1 mole of dioxygen, I can only produce 2 moles of water, assuming I have enough dihydrogen. So 1 mole of dioxygen produces 2 moles of water. So that's interesting because it says 300,000 moles of dihydrogen are reacted with 1 mole of dioxygen. So we have a lot of dihydrogen. I guess we were hoping to produce a lot of water, but we can't. We have a very small quantity of dioxygen. So of course that's going to be the limiting reactant. And the reason I made these numbers so very unbalanced today is to show very clearly what a limiting reactant is. If you have a lot of one chemical but a very little amount of the other chemical, then the smaller amount is the limiting reactant. Okay, so what is the maximum quantity of water that can be produced? Well, we said that if you have only 1 mole of dioxygen, you can only produce 2 moles of water. So I can only produce 2 moles of water. Oxygen or dioxygen is the limiting reactant, and I'm going to have a residual product. I'm going to have a lot of dihydrogen left over. All right, why is this important? Well, if you're starting a factory and you have limited storage, you want to buy just the right quantity of chemicals. You don't want to have a lot of residual product. You don't want to have a lot of leftovers. You don't want to have one chemical sitting in storage and maybe the other chemical getting all used up, and everything's very imbalanced. When you're ordering your chemicals, you want to order just the right amount so that there's a minimal amount of storage. But what is wrong with storing dihydrogen? What if you have some leftover dihydrogen? Well, this is what's wrong. In the old days, you could take a plane somewhere, but a lot of people chose to fly in a balloon or a blimp. And helium makes blimps float really well, but hydrogen is even lighter than helium. So this is a balloon that was filled with hydrogen and it caught on fire. Hydrogen is very, very flammable, and this is called the Hindenburg disaster, when all the hydrogen just caught on fire. So dihydrogen is very, very flammable. If you were producing water and you bought way too much dihydrogen, you'd have to store it very, very carefully because dihydrogen is very, very flammable. Another disaster I can think of that was caused by dihydrogen is the Fukushima nuclear disaster. One of the reasons it exploded is because the water was broken down into its component elements, dioxygen and dihydrogen, and the dihydrogen floated to the very top of the building, and it got too hot, and it caught on fire, and it caused an explosion. It was a dihydrogen explosion, and that released a lot of nuclear radiation into the atmosphere. So you really, really have to be very careful with dihydrogen, with dioxygen too, and you have to contain them, you have to store them, you have to manage them. And if you are going to ever start a factory and things are not balanced, you're going to have a lot of leftover dihydrogen, you have to manage that for safety reasons. That is my lesson on limiting reactants and how these issues that we're learning relate to industry and to safety. The end.